They filled arenas and topped the charts, making record labels rich beyond imagination. Then they signed one piece of paper that quietly took it all away: their royalties, their name, their right to ever walk away. 12 R&B legends, 12 contracts that weren't deals, they were cages. Number 12, the S.O.S. Band. Number 12 on our list is the S.O.S. Band. In 1980, the Atlanta group broke through with Take Your Time, Do It Right, a song that shot to number 1 on the R&B charts and crossed over to the pop top 3. 3 years later, Just Be Good to Me, produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, cemented them as one of the defining sounds of early 80s soul. It should have set them up for life. Instead, it locked them into Tabu Records, the label run by music executive Clarence Avant, and distributed through CBS, under a contract that gave the label sweeping control over their output, their sound, and their business affairs for years to come. As the group's hits slowed through the rest of the decade, they found themselves boxed in, unable to simply walk away, unable to renegotiate from a position of strength. Tethered to a deal signed back when they had no leverage and no real understanding of what they were giving up. Lineup changes followed through the 90s and 2000s, and later members trying to reclaim the S.O.S. band name for touring and licensing ran into disputes over who actually controlled the brand they built. It's a problem that echoed across the entire Tabu roster. A label remembered fondly for its sound, and quietly for how tightly it held onto the artists who made that sound possible. Questions over who legally controls the S.O.S. band's name and legacy for booking and licensing purposes have never fully been resolved even today. One song made the label a fortune. One contract kept the group from ever seeing their fair share of it. Number 11. The Gap Band. Number 11 is the Gap Band. Brothers Charlie, Ronnie, and Robert Wilson built one of the most sampled catalogs in music history. Outstanding, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, Early in the Morning, records that would go on to power hits for Dr. Dre, Tupac, and dozens of other artists decades later. At the peak of their run in the early 80s, the Gap Band was one of the most commercially dominant acts in black music. But behind the hits was Total Experience Records, run by producer and manager Lonnie Simmons, a man the group would later describe as controlling nearly every part of their business. Songwriting credits, royalty splits, and release schedules all ran through Simmons and the label structure he built around them. For years, the brothers watched other artists and other labels sampling their own records, build wealth off catalogs smaller than theirs, while their own deal kept the real money moving somewhere else. It took decades and multiple rounds of legal battles over publishing and songwriting credit before the Wilson brothers began clawing back meaningful control of the songs that had already made someone else rich. Even now, conversations around sample clearances and royalty payments on Gap Band records continue to surface a reminder that the contract signed in 1979 is still shaping what the family sees from a catalog that never stopped earning for everyone else involved. Charlie Wilson has spoken about how long it took him to recover, financially and emotionally, from watching a body of work that powerful get filtered through a structure built to benefit Simmons first and the group second. Every time a new artist samples You Dropped a Bomb on Me, that same contract from 1979 helps decide who actually gets paid. The brothers wrote the sound of a generation, someone else wrote the terms.
Here's something most people don't realize. Only about 10% of you watching will hit subscribe. The other 90% just watch and move on. You made it this far, So you're clearly not most people. Hit subscribe. Back to the countdown.
Number 10. Klymaxx. Number 10 is Klymaxx. The all-female band that gave the 80s, The Men All Pause, and I Miss You. The group was originally built and led by drummer Bernadette Cooper in Los Angeles in the late 70s. And it was Cooper who shaped the band's early sound, image, and business direction before they ever landed a major deal. But once Klymaxx signed to MCA and the hits started landing in 1984, internal contract and business disputes pushed Cooper out of the very group she had built from the ground up. A split that changed who controlled the name, the songwriting direction, and the money going forward from that point on. The remaining members continued without her, scoring more hits through the mid-80s, including I'd Still Say Yes. But the group audiences saw on stage and heard on the radio was no longer operating under the same creative control or the same ownership stake that had defined it in the beginning. It's a story that rarely makes the highlight reel of 80s R&B, but it's one of the clearest examples of how a contract signed at the wrong moment can push the very person who built a group out of their own creation entirely. Cooper went on to pursue other production and performing work, while the Klymaxx name continued to generate radio play and touring revenue under a structure she no longer had a stake in. For a band that broke ground as one of the only self-contained all-female acts of the era, the fight over who owned Klymaxx became as significant to their legacy as the hit records themselves. Bernadette Cooper built the band from nothing and watched it become a hit machine without her. Her name slipped further from the credits with every year that passed. Number 9. DeBarge. Number 9 is DeBarge. Formed within Motown's own artist development system in the late 70s, the family group was positioned as the label's answer to a changing R&B landscape, and by 1985, Rhythm of the Night had made them international pop stars. But being a Motown-built family act came with a catch. Their contract tied their careers directly to the label's internal structure and to Motown's long-standing control over songwriting credit. Royalty splits and release schedules, the same control model that had already drawn lawsuits from other Motown artists across the label's history. As the group's internal pressures mounted through the mid-80s, the business structure around them offered little room to renegotiate terms or step outside the system Motown had built for them from day one. What should have been a launching pad for multiple solo careers, and for lead singer DeBarge in particular, instead left several members spending years afterward trying to establish financial independence from a deal that was designed, from the start, to keep the family inside Motown's orbit, rather than let any one member break out on their own terms. By the time Motown itself was sold off in the late 80s and the label's old guard scattered, DeBarge found themselves untangling contract obligations from a company that no longer even operated the way it had when they signed. Rebuilding a career and a royalty stream from that position took most of the family the better part of 2 decades, with DeBarge himself only fully stabilizing his solo footing well into his later career. A family built to be Motown's next big thing ended up trapped inside Motown's oldest playbook. The hits were real, the freedom to enjoy them wasn't. Number 8. SWV. Number 8 is SWV Sisters with Voices, formed in New York and signed to RCA in 1991. The trio broke through with Weak, a ballad that became one of the defining R&B records of the 90s. hitting #1 on the Hot 100 and helping their debut album, It's About Time, go multi-platinum. But behind the scenes, the group has spoken publicly, years later, about how little of that success translated into lasting financial security at the time. Contract terms from their RCA-era deal, combined with management arrangements typical of 90s R&B acts, signed young and without independent legal counsel, meant the group saw a fraction of the revenue their radio dominance and album sales actually generated. The pressure from those business realities was part of what pushed the group toward a hiatus by the end of the decade, even as their records kept getting played everywhere. It's a pattern that repeated across 90s R&B, massive airplay, gold and platinum plaques on the wall, and artists who still had to fight, years after the fact, just to understand where the money had actually gone and why so little of it had reached them directly. When SWV eventually reunited in the 2000s for touring and new material, part of what made the comeback meaningful was the group finally negotiating from a position where they understood the business side of their own catalog, a level of financial literacy none of them had access to, as young women signing their first major label deal in their late teens and early 20s. Weak made SWV a household wasn't theirs. Number 7. Belle Biv DeVoe. Number 7 is Belle Biv DeVoe. Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, and Ronnie DeVoe had already lived through one predatory contract as teenagers in New Edition. When they split off in 1990 to form their own group, the goal was control, write their own material, run their own business, keep more of what they earned than they had the first time around. Their debut single, Poison, went on to become a multi-platinum, genre-defining hit, and one of the signature records of the new Jack Swing era. But even with that hard-won lesson from their New Edition years, the trio still had to navigate a major label contract system at MCA, built to root the biggest share of Poison,
oh yeah, back to the video,
and its massive commercial success back through label and publishing structures they didn't fully own themselves. Songwriting splits, production credits, and distribution terms all still ran through the same kind of layered corporate machine that had shortchanged them the first time. Their story is proof that even artists who had already been burned once, who came in knowing exactly what to watch for, still had to fight the same industry playbook a second time, just with slightly better terms than before.
If I were you, I'd take.
Bivins would go on to use those hard-earned lessons to build his own management and production company, discovering and guiding acts like Boys to Men and Another Bad Creation, a direct response to watching how little control artists his own age had typically been given by the very labels that signed them in the first place. They'd already been burned once by New Edition's contract, and they walked into MCA with their eyes open. The industry found a new way to take its cut anyway. Number 6. Jodeci. Number 6 is Jodeci.
Every time I close my eyes.
Casey Haley, Jojo Haley, Mr. Dalvin, and Devante Swing helped invent the sound of 90s R&B under Uptown Records and its distribution deal with MCA, going platinum with their 1991 debut, Forever My Lady, and following it up with 1993's Diary of a Mad Band. At their commercial peak, Jodeci was one of the biggest R&B acts in the country. But as Uptown's internal power struggles played out through the mid-90s, including the label's own founder, Andre Harrell, eventually leaving to run Motown, and Uptown's day-to-day control. Shifting hands more than once, the contract structure underneath Jodeci meant the group had limited say over how their business, their release schedule, and their royalty accounting were actually managed during the chaos. By the time the group quietly dissolved by the end of the decade, and K-Ci and JoJo split off to pursue their own solo career, both brothers had to renegotiate their standing in the industry from a position that gave them far less financial control than their multi-platinum record sales should have earned them years earlier. Mr. Dalvin and Devontae Swing, meanwhile, spent years afterward working to re-establish their own footing in an industry that had moved on the moment Jodeci's contract with Uptown stopped generating headlines. A fate common to R&B groups, whose business terms were built entirely around the label's convenience rather than the artist's long-term financial stability and creative independence. The same imbalance that had defined Uptown's approach to nearly every act on its roster during that stretch of the 90s. Four Voices defined a sound that changed R&B forever. The label behind them changed hands, changed leadership, and changed the rules mid-game, and Jodeci paid the price for a business they never controlled. Number 5. Bobby Womack. Number 5 is Bobby Womack, a man who wrote hits for other artists before the world fully caught up to his own genius. Womack got his start with Sam Cooke's S.O.S. Records, and after Cooke's death in 1964, the label's collapse left Womack navigating a series of new deals across multiple companies through the 60s and 70s, including United Artists and Arista, while trying to hold on to publishing and songwriting royalties on records he had written and performed himself. His song, It's All Over Now, became a massive hit for the Rolling Stones. And while Womack did eventually see songwriting income from that cover, the pattern of his own performing contracts, undervaluing his contributions, repeated across his career. Even as solo classics like Across 110th Street and Woman's Gotta Have It cemented his reputation as one of soul music's most important songwriters, the business side rarely matched the creative respect. Song ownership disputes and shifting label deals followed him for decades. A recurring theme for a songwriter whose catalog quietly powered other people's careers and other artists' hits, while his own contracts rarely reflected what he was actually worth to the industry that kept signing him. Late in his career, Womack spoke openly in interviews about how many of the industry's biggest names had built fortunes on songs and sounds he originated decades earlier, while he spent that same stretch of time negotiating and renegotiating just to keep pace financially with artists who had built entire careers standing on his shoulders and his catalog. He wrote the songs other people got rich on, and he signed the deals that made sure of it. Bobby Womack spent a lifetime chasing the value he'd already created. Number 4. The Isley Brothers. Number 4 is the Isley Brothers. One of the longest-running acts in R&B history, and one of the most litigated. Formed in the mid-50s, the group moved through a string of label deals over the decades, including a stretch with Motown in the 60s that produced This Old Heart of Mine, before the brothers eventually launched their own T-neck label to try to claw back control of their masters and publishing. Even with that move toward independence, distribution deals with larger companies meant outside labels still held significant leverage over the catalog for years afterward. Across 6 decades and multiple contract structures, the group has been locked in disputes over ownership of their own songs,
Put my hand on my head.
including a lawsuit brought by founding member Rudolph Isley against his own brother Ronald over rights to the Isley Brothers' name and royalty income. Add in decades of hip-hop and R&B sampling built directly on top of Isley Brothers' instrumental sampling that didn't always come with fair compensation attached to the original writers,
What I saw was another.
and you get a catalog worth hundreds of millions of dollars that the family has had to keep fighting for, generation after generation, just to hold on to what they built in the first place. The Rudolph versus Ronald dispute, which played out in court decades after both men had already built their fortune on the same songs,
Only God knows what.
showed just how deep those original contract structures still reached a family still untangling business terms, first put on paper back when Eisenhower was president,
Wow, I'm in the hall contemplating.
and still negotiating today over money generated by songs written before most of their own grandchildren were born.
Then a man said,
6 decades of hits, 6 decades of contracts nobody in the family fully controlled.
"On between the sheets,
Even brothers ended up in court, fighting over what should have belonged to all of them.
this grand."
Mr. Biggs, before you're done.
Wait, how you know my
Number 3, Rick James. Number 3 is Rick James.
She likes the boys and the.
As the architect of the Super Freak sound, and one of Motown's biggest-selling artists with his 1981 album Street Songs, James built what amounted to his own hit-making empire inside the label, writing and producing not just his own records, but hits for other Motown acts, like the Mary Jane Girls. And yet, at the height of that success, James still found himself boxed in by a Motown contract structure that gave the label enormous control over his output, his image, and the size of his actual cut of the profits. James spent years publicly clashing with Motown over creative control and royalty terms, a fight that echoed what dozens of Motown artists before him, going back to the label's earliest Detroit years, had already gone through with a contract system the industry itself came to regard as notoriously artist-unfriendly.
Once you get her off the street.
Fellow Motown artist Tina Marie, who James mentored and produced, would go on to sue the label over similar contract terms, a case significant enough that it helped reshape California's laws on how long a label could hold an artist
It's pretty wild now.
without releasing new music. The music made Motown a fortune for decades.
Yeah. Super freak. She's
The contract made sure James had to fight, publicly and repeatedly, for what should have been his fair share of it, and even as one of the label's biggest stars of the era, he was never fully able to escape the same imbalanced structure
waiting.
that had shaped Motown contracts since the label's earliest days in Detroit.
Everybody sing.
A structure built to protect the company's bottom line, long before it protected any artists. He built Motown a fortune with Super Freak alone. Motown built him a contract designed to keep the biggest share for itself.
With her girlfriends in a limousine.
Number 2. Mary J. Blige. Number 2 is Mary J. Blige. Discovered singing into a mall karaoke machine
They see that we did that. Yeah.
and signed to Uptown Records in 1989 as the label's youngest and first female solo artist.
Too hard to fake it. Nothing can replace it.
Blige became the queen of hip-hop soul with her 1992 debut, What's the 411, which sold 3 million copies,
My caller radio if you just can't.
and the multi-platinum 1994 follow-up, My Life. But Blige has spoken candidly, years later, about how the deals she signed as a teenager,
We've been through it. Yeah. We got
coming straight out of the Schlobohm housing projects in Yonkers, left her without ownership of her own masters, and without royalty terms
three was crazy from the get-go. Neither
that came anywhere close to matching what she was actually generating for the label.
do something behind my back and then try.
She's described being surrounded, in those early years, by people more interested in keeping her compliant than in protecting her financial future.
Have a love to know just what
It's become one of the most cited cautionary tales in modern R&B. An artist who built a genre-defining sound, sold millions of records for other people's companies, and still had to spend years afterward learning, the hard way and largely in public, what owning your own work actually meant. Blige has since made a point of telling younger artists directly to understand every line of what they sign. A lesson she says she only fully learned after watching how much of her own success ended up benefiting everyone around her before it ever benefited her. She's talked about renegotiating her own deals later in her career from a position of real leverage, something she credits to years of watching lawyers and managers profit off numbers she herself didn't fully understand until it was almost too late to change them. A teenager from the projects became the queen of hip-hop soul. The deal she signed to get there almost made sure she never saw the money. Number 1. New Edition. Number 1 is New Edition, and their story is the one every artist on this list should have been warned about first. In 1983, teenage members Ricky Bell, Michael Bivins, Ronnie DeVoe, Bobby Brown, and Ralph Tresvant scored a massive hit with Candy Girl under producer and manager Maurice Starr's independent label, Streetwise Records. The single topped the R&B charts, the album went platinum, and the group toured the country as one of the biggest new acts in music. And when the checks finally arrived in their mailboxes after all of it, each member received $1.87. Furious, the group fired Starr, accused him of taking their earnings, and sued to get out of their contract entirely, a legal fight that dragged through federal court as Bell versus Streetwise Records. They won the right to keep their own name and signed a new deal with MCA later that year. But Starr wasn't finished. He turned around and built New Kids on the Block, using the exact same formula that had made New Edition stars, later admitting in interviews that he believed if New Edition had been white, they would have been 20 times as big as they were. 5 teenagers made a record label rich, got paid less than $2 for it, and had to sue in federal court just to keep the name they'd built. That's not a bad deal. That's the entire blueprint every single artist on this list eventually found themselves trapped inside, in one form or another. $1.87. That's what a platinum album was worth to the 5 teenagers who earned it.